Hi, my name is John Curran. I'm a docent at the Irish Museum in Newport, Rhode Island. The name Curran is an Irish surname, and it's the Anglicization of the Gaelic O Curran. This surname is numerous and widespread in Ireland. It dates back to the 17th century when it was recorded as one of the most numerous names in the county of Tipperary. The county Kerry had over 140 Currans. One of the most famous Currans was John Philpot Curran, 1750 to 1817. He was an orator, an Irish patriot from the county Cork. And his daughter, Sarah Curran, 1781 to 1808, is one of the biggest romantic, tragic figures in all of Ireland because she was involved with Robert Emmet, who was a very famous revolutionary who was caught by the British in the 1803. He was beheaded, and they caught him and killed him. And she had quite a history. There's quite a bit of information about her, too, in the Wikipedia. I was born in 1933 in Newport, and family legend has it that my Uncle John, who was early interested in aviation, flew over the Newport Hospital when I was born. I was educated in St. Mary's School in Newport. I went to De La Salle Academy, which was run by the Christian Brothers for many years. It is now closed. Providence College graduate. I spent time in the U.S. Marine Corps during the Korean War. I graduated, I got a master's degree from Boston University, and I taught middle school, high school, became head of the English department and vice principal of the local high school, Rogers High School. And as I retired, strangely enough, I retired in 1988, and I was an adjunct teacher at Roger Williams University for 7 or 8 years. Then I taught at CCRI up until a few years ago when I became 80 years old, and then I kind of called it quits at that time. I'm 83 now. So, yes, I taught all my life. I was born in the 5th Ward, but I moved out at a very young age as a baby. I lived on Old Fort Road, and my parents moved uptown. So I ended up, most of my childhood was on Golden Hill Street in Newport, Rhode Island, up by the Newport Library, which was a wonderful place to grow up. I had tennis courts, and I had the library on rainy days, and it was pretty nice. And then when my father died, when I was a freshman in high school, I moved back to my grandfather had a house on Old Fort Road, and I moved there with my mother and my uncle and my aunt. And so I came back to the 5th Ward. And then when I was married, I moved out of the 5th Ward for a few years, but we finally found a very nice house on Harrison Avenue about, I think it's 50 some odd years ago now. And I hate to tell you what it's worth today, but so I did come back to the 5th Ward, because it's symbolically the 5th Ward. Now it's a 3rd Ward, but in the hearts and minds of the local Irishmen, it's still the 5th Ward. It was a very good education. We had to, when we were in the 7th and 8th grades, we had to wear white shirts and blue ties, and the girls had uniforms, and it was pretty strict. Some of the nuns were more strict than others, of course, and so I really enjoyed my elementary education. And Sister Mary Catherine, who was the principal, later became the first librarian and one of the most important founders of Salve Regina College. I was an altar boy when they had in that beautiful original chapel. In the 8th grade, I had to get up in front of the class and read the life of the saints for that day. I always remember the first one I read was St. Stephen the Martyr, who was stoned to death. But yeah, the grandparents on my mother's side was John Shea, and his wife was Margaret Shea. She was a Donovan from Boston, Massachusetts. She was from Chelsea. Yes, he and his brother Dan were for the Irish in that era. They were very well educated. They could read and write music, and they were. So the Uncle Dan ended up in Virginia. he became a bandmaster too down there. And what's the fort down there in Virginia, the famous?
Fort Monroe?
He was a bandmaster in Fort Monroe in Virginia, and my grandfather Shay was a bandmaster up here in the at Fort Adams in the 1900s. So.